and don't lose your love of food, and don't ever lose the focus of the produce, that it should always be about produce. Don't come in with a bloody recipe and go, how do I find those ingredients? Always look at your season, look at the gardens and the producers around you, start there and then enjoy that produce.
Hey there, it is Dani Valent here with you for an episode of Dirty Linen. I love doing EPs in situ. Usually I'm sitting at my desk in my little study at home in Melbourne, but today I am coming to you from Tinger Farm in Mudgee. Dirty Linen has been here a couple of times before. We've talked about the Zin House, low wines, and all the different and wonderful things that happen at Tinger Farm, this beautiful place a couple of hours west of Sydney in New South Wales. I am sitting in the Zin House with Kim Currie, who is now a double return guest on Dirty Linen. This is the third time that we've had Kim on the show. Welcome.
Hi Dani, lovely to have you here in Mudgee.
It's so beautiful to be here. I'm looking out at a sunny day. People are out there picking grapes because it's harvest time. The garden is abundant. The skies are blue. There's a beautiful, gentle morning haze over the hills. What is this time of year like for you?
That conflict or contrast between the fact that we know February is our quietest month. We half joke that every February we try to lose less money than we did the February before. So this year we've planned to have as many staff taking leave and to have, but at the same time to have lots of activities so that we're giving people reasons to come out here. And as you said, it's harvest. So ironically, yeah, we're busier than we ever are. But in a nice way, because we're getting really hands-on. And we do things like, for the last couple of weeks, staff from all different teams have been joining in the crop thinning on the vineyard in the morning. So we're out there and it's crisp and it's talking to people you don't necessarily get to see and hearing everybody have chats, and it's a nice little bonding time. And David feels good because we're grooming those vines and dropping anything that isn't perfect. So we do lots of different things in February, and some days it's hot and some days it's cold, and but as you said, the abundance as well. So everything that's on the menu at the moment is coming from here, and that's so exciting.
Well, we were very fortunate to have dinner with you at your house last night, and we ate everything from the property. Tell us about some of the things that we enjoyed.
Well, it's full-on fig season, and as anyone who knows and loves and grows figs knows, that you've got a very, very small window, short window, and they don't keep very well. So it's so lovely to have them when they're absolutely perfect, and the rest of the time we're making jam and paste or roasting them, honeying them, drying them, all sorts of other things. So figs, grapes obviously. We have some lovely muskets, table grapes here, as well as all the wine grapes. Zinfandel, of course, is actually originally a table grape. So we had some Gordo Blanco, which is the white, and Muscat Hamburg. And we had rocket with some chilies from the garden, carrots with our lamb, which was Tinger lamb, roast carrots, potatoes, all sorts of, probably about half dozen or at least varieties of potatoes that are freshly dug. And I was joking with you last night and laughing about the fact that people who have grown up around food, or with people who are traditionally gardeners and cooks, know that you only boil or steam a new potato. And it's one of the challenges I've had over the years. I'll say to chefs from Europe, why did you cook that potato? Why did you fry that potato? Why did you cook it in that way or mash it or whatever? It's a new potato, and it seems obvious to me that means that you only treat it really simply and enjoy the flavour of the new season. And they're some of the things that I don't know how we teach people those things, that used to be taken for granted when people were really, really connected and close to the land, and to generations of people who, of course, taught their children and their grandchildren something as simple as, it's a new potato, don't do anything else with it.
Well, I guess I've never successfully grown, much at all, and not potatoes for sure. But I suppose when you're watching the potatoes grow, and perhaps you're the one who's charged with coming in and picking them, and then you know if you're taking them straight to the kitchen or storing them. So I suppose you're watching that life cycle. And if you're not doing that, you do need someone to tell you, and then you need to trust them, and I suppose you need to experience the difference as well. And when a potato is just a potato is just a potato.
One of the advantages now, of course, is that lots of people are interested. They do want to know about different varieties. They do want to grow them for themselves. They do want to know what you do with things, not just the different varieties, but at different times of the year. And of course, we were laughing about the cauliflower too. I think it was your show where we had these magnificent cauliflowers, and you said, what are you loving at the moment? I said, these gorgeous cauliflowers. And then you did an interview with the chef, and you said, so what are you doing? And he said, cauliflower mash. I'm like, oh my God, because that's exactly the sort of thing that we're saying, like, don't mash everything, don't puree everything. I'm an adult with all of my own teeth. I don't need to eat out of a straw. Stop pureeing everything. Give me things with texture as well as flavour and varieties of things on a plate.
Well, also food that you can see, like a cauliflower is so beautiful, as is a potato. I mean, to see those shapes and to experience the textures, to be at least visually a bit more connected to what that vegetable is like, is also part of the story.
Yeah, and that's been part of the challenge for me, because as I told you, the last few weeks I've been in the kitchen, and I haven't been intensely and in charge in the kitchen at Zin House for a number of years. And our lovely new chef, who happens to be from my hometown, Mount Maunganui in New Zealand, told me when we employed her, I'm going to New Zealand for 7 weeks, very soon after she started. So Christmas came, we did our big Christmas that we always do, and then I went straight into the restaurant, which was quite intimidating initially because it's been so many years, and I've seen all of these really clever, talented young chefs with all the amazing things that they do and their techniques, and I didn't know whether I was going to be able to live up to the diversity of things that all of these young chefs, generally young chefs, have been doing over the last few years. And it took me a while to find my confidence, and I realised that I still got it and that it is the simplicity, and it is the just following, looking in the garden and taking the produce and not messing around with it. That is what Zin House is all about, and is that honouring produce. The other interesting thing is it didn't take me nearly as long to be organised and prepare food for service. And every now and then I was checking in, well, actually quite often, with our front of house staff and other members of the team, and saying, is this too simple? Is it too rustic? There must be something I'm not getting, because it's actually not taking nearly as long or having nearly as many people involved. And their reassurance, and the customers seem to have loved what we're doing. Of course, it's incredibly lucky because it's that abundant season where the produce is so divine, it really does just speak for itself. But it's been quite reassuring in lots of ways. And one of those things that I'm sure I've talked to you about before, the older I get, the more I trust my own judgment. And so it was another layer on that thing about ageing and going, it's the things I actually do know. Also having the wisdom to know when you don't, and include people and be collaborative. But that's Zin House we've always said we cook simply from scratch with what we grow, and we used to say something on our website about no foams, no tweezers, no dots, and then as some of that stuff started creeping in, I think we sort of adjusted some of the stuff on the website and to reflect the fact that we weren't as much of the essence as we'd started with. And so this period of several weeks in the kitchen has built my confidence to work with incoming chefs and cooks and go, actually, this is what we do, and we're really happy to learn from you and see what you can bring, but don't forget that this is the essence of this restaurant. This is what we stand for, and it is about the produce and the garden. It's about simplicity. Don't go showing off on a plate.
That's so instructive, I think, for people listening, and I feel like it's instructive for me, for anyone who works with any sort of craft, that, instead of going back to your values that you'd printed on the menu and saying, no, this is what we do, you actually changed what you'd written about yourselves and let people go off on a tangent and sort of take you away from where you started or the identity that you'd found for yourselves. So such an interesting example of how, I wouldn't say things were off track, because it's always so beautiful here, and people are always having beautiful experiences. You're always, loved by customers and critics and everyone. But it's so interesting that it sort of became a restaurant that it's your restaurant, but you felt you didn't have quite the confidence to walk into your own kitchen.
Yeah. Well, our industry, as you know, changes so much, and young people have been so influential in bringing in new techniques and adopting ideas from all around the world, which is also wonderful. It's really easy to be in the thrall of that and to think, oh, well, maybe I'm just a has-been who I'm not up with it. So finding that balance is always a challenge.
Yeah, I can sort of relate to it as a writer, where you read something and you're like, this is so good. I couldn't do this. How did they come up with that turn of phrase? How they used language? What might have been the intention or the thought or the craft behind it? But then I suppose you have to do it in your own way to stay true, don't you? It's like, what do you learn from that? Not how do you copy it?
So it's been a lovely few weeks to do all of those things, go through all that range of emotions, and to get in touch with things like, we don't all know that life is too short to peel a tomato, but the rustic tomato pasta sauce I make, I saw a couple of eyebrows raised when other staff have come back in. But I also know it's the most delicious sauce that any of our customers have eaten. Because, again, it's all about the tomato. And I don't need to peel the bloody tomatoes. I don't need to puree the whole thing. And that every part of that is so important, it's the oil and the herbs and the time that the onions are cooked for, and the addition of the wine, and then settling it all down to the right consistency. And all of that said, it takes very little time, and it sits on the stove while I'm doing other things. And nobody that works here, no matter how talented they are, and we have lots and lots of talented people, have the confidence to cook that simply. So now I know that that's part of the role I have to play, but finding that balance and the time to it's a constant challenge. So that, right, how would you do it? What are your techniques? And then finding the way to not be coming in over the top of people. And that's further complicated because I'm hopeless at doing a standard recipe. So how do you pass those sorts of things? So it's a constant dance, and it's what a good, healthy kitchen is all about.
Yeah, well, I also loved at dinner last night how you put tomatoes and handfuls of basil on a plate and with a knife, and we could just take a tomato, appreciate the tomato, feel its wholeness, its shape, its weight, and then just cut a bit off it. Cut it and eat it. It's so delicious.
When we opened Zin House 10 years ago, I remember putting little quail eggs out and getting people to peel them. That whole tactile part of an introduction right early on, setting the expectation that you're going to get your hands dirty and that food should involve you in those sorts of experiences. And I think that the quail eggs, were peeling quail eggs at the table, proved a little challenging for people. Another time when we were growing a hemp crop, and we actually had an industrial hemp licence. We proved to be terrible hemp growers, but it was quite fun because it looks just like dope. And we put them in matchboxes on the table and let people add them to their meal. And I can't even remember what it was supposed to be adding to their meal other than the novelty of it. And engaging people in something other than there just being a plate in front of them, which is why shared plates are so much part of my philosophy. And I don't care if people don't like shared plates, go somewhere else. Don't come here, but don't ask me to do an a la carte menu. This is my philosophy. This is sharing food with people and the engagement that is involved in caring for another person, ensuring they have food on their plate, and moving that around and talking about that shared experience is so much a part of what food should be about. And that's my other bugbear when you're talking about things just on a plate and straight up as they are, is how many modern meals in restaurants are protein focused. Like, where's the salad? Forgive me if I've said this stuff before, because I did, but it's where's the variation in texture? Where's that give us greens, give us those things that are naturally crunchy, not contrived crunchy by cooking something, drying it, dehydrating it, frying it. Like, those things are a lovely novelty, but I hope they're not too day to day.
Well, I think the fact that you've got a beautiful market garden that you can walk around and you can see what's coming through, and you can see the crunch when you look at it. You can see the texture, or you know what's there. I mean, do you think that's got a lot to do with it?
It's an incredible privilege. It's an expensive privilege, obviously, because running a market garden the size that we have is not an easy task. And I know we've talked about that before, that we could buy our produce in for much, much less than it costs us. But that engagement in the whole experience, the wholeness, the end-to-end, the pleasure of doing that, as well as obviously the ultimate thing, which is the flavour, is worth every bit of it.
And I think that idea of you watch things come into season and go out of season. So I think, we talked about it a little bit in terms of potatoes, but it's the same with so many other plants, isn't it, where you can eat them at different stages of maturity. What are you sort of loving? What have you loved this summer around that, like the stages of a different vegetable?
Yeah, well, obviously tomatoes, because they're just the ultimate summer crop. I talked to you about how much we're doing with figs. Radishes is an interesting example because I like to use them when they're the size of a 5-cent piece and they're just perfect. And you've got the stem, and say to people, eat the leaf, eat the whole thing. And then as they get bigger, if they have not gone hollow or woody, then I cut them a different way to get people more engaged with them, or maybe serve with them with a bunya chowder and then julienne them a little and chiffonade the leaf, so that we're still getting people to eat the whole thing, or trick them into it even. And then if they've gone past that stage, well, then we pickle them and can use them all year round. So the big challenge of summer is the oversupply, and there's just so much. 2 people spent all day yesterday picking basil. For example, we're still using the last of the blood plums. That's what we had on the frangipane tart last night. That was delicious. So just then the quinces will come on, and then there'll be the pomegranates, which luckily store quite well. So we're just constantly using up those surplus of the season. We don't have a cool room anymore. We have a cucumber and marrow storage facility. And when that got too much for us, I took baskets and baskets of big squash and marrows to Althea, our bakery, on the weekend. It would just help yourself. And my son Sam, who works as a barista at the bakery on the weekends, said, It was the loveliest engagement because people just love having something for free, but they were coming in and saying, how do I cook this? What do I do with it? And what's the story? Where does it come from? And we assume people know that we have this lovely garden and what we do and our philosophies, but it gave them a chance to talk about that and also to give people tips on, this is one way that you can take that squash home and cook it and enjoy it.
You mentioned, this puzzle of February and losing less money than you did the February before. And one of the things you've been doing is cooking classes. Can you tell me about those and what you learn from the cooks that come here?
Yeah, that's funny because one lady who came to our preserving pickling jam class came a few days later with her recipes. She's American and they'd used a lot of horseradish and she knew that we had horseradish here too, so she'd brought her recipes in. The classes are more an exercise in community engagement and building relationships with people, and they were very popular gift vouchers too. And notice when people come to the classes, I ask them to tell us a little bit about themselves and what they'd like to achieve in the time that they're here, and then to see strangers at the end of a class sitting and spending an hour or more talking and having shared a meal, glass of wine, and still staying and chatting even when it's probably officially time to have left. So it's very successful in all of those ways. It's that old term love mark. They're great for that as for our business. Not a big money spinner, obviously, because we don't do more than about 12 people in max. They get to meet Marek, our head baker, has come in and done a series of sourdough classes, which only the tip of the iceberg. I always joke at the end of that, right, who's going home to make sourdough and who's going to be very happy to pay $5.50 for a baguette at Althea from now on?
Well, I mean, that's such a good point. I think to know what goes into something is as much the point of it as anything else. I think, you can learn how to make an amazing, restaurant standard stock and you'll be like, yep, I'm going to keep going to restaurants now.
Yeah. Oh, we do a pasta class and similar sort of thing. I'd say, if you expect me to put flour in a lovely circle and break some eggs in the middle and then knead that in, go and look at TikTok. It just says, this is a food processor. I'm a busy woman. I'm going to show you how I do it. But if you want to do that and you love it and you're getting satisfaction from that, then absolutely go for it. But showing you this is what I would do in this kitchen and how we make our pasta in reality. And then for the pasta class, we do a series of sauces that are contents of garden is our most popular, right? Let's go to the garden. We're going to collect some things. Now we're going to turn that into a sauce. Toss it onto our pasta.
Oh, so wonderful. It can feel very, away from the world and all its pressures here, but of course you're very much implicated in, economic pressures just like any other food or hospitality business. How do you sort of balance that? Like, do you feel like you're keeping the world at bay or do you feel like you're subject to it?
Well, we've scaled down from... Most people could see what was going to be happening 18 months or so ago, and we thought we'd scaled enough, but it probably wasn't quite enough. And David and I have become more hands-on, but we also have a really great small team. And in lots of ways, being smaller now, our whole team, we're communicating better. There's actually a very supportive, professional, caring group of people who look out for each other and for David and I. So there's been bonuses to that, and it's meant everybody's constantly pivoting and looking at the things that work. We're pretty happy with the way things are going, and post-COVID, when everybody was coming to the regions, it was almost trauma-inducing. We'd say on a Saturday morning, are you ready for the orcs? Because it kind of felt like, you opened the doors and the masses were going to come. It was quite overwhelming in lots of ways. So nice to sell all that wine and take people's money off them. But to be sustainable and true to your core beliefs, that amount of intensity was really hard to maintain. And of course, it all happened on generally 1 or 2 days. We do half our business on a Saturday across cellar door and the restaurant. So that's tough too. So just trying to find the ways of spreading that load and having that balance of not going broke, being able to keep everybody employed, not having to do too much ourselves. Sometimes our kids point out that you're getting older. We say, oh, go away. Or people say, what are your plans for retirement? We say, well, retirement, that's for people who don't enjoy what they're doing. But the reality is that we do have to balance all of that. And I feel that the downturn has given us the opportunity to do that in some ways, if looking at it glass half full.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, are you enjoying what you're doing? Are you happy here?
Well, we love Tinger, and it's our life's work, and I think it's easier for. Sometimes I tease David and I say, well, you love winemaking. I love cooking, but I don't like being on my feet cooking at a commercial level for 60 hours a week. And so for me, finding that balance is more of a challenge, and I am going to take some more time this year, and I'm going to do more cooking for pleasure, and I am going to try and do some recipes and a little bit of writing. But I've been saying that for about 5 years now, so we'll see.
Well, it's recorded now, so you better do it. Kim, just finally, do you have any advice for chefs or cooks coming into the industry, particularly women, about, I don't know, perhaps about mindset or values or things that they might not want to let go of?
Firstly, I think kitchens should be gentle places, and I don't think people should accept anything else. It doesn't mean that with that degree of intensity and with what everybody has to put out and with how the challenges of service, but I think that some of that is artificial because of the amount of complexity that people are introducing to food. So I'd say it's okay to do things well and simply. That doesn't mean that you're not as good as somebody who's creating something that you might see in a magazine or Copenhagen. And on that, how often when people are in magazines and they show you what they cook at home, it's the sort of food I'm talking about. And it's completely different to the food that they're putting out in their restaurants. So remember that as well. That if you're not enjoying it, why is that? Is it the pressures you're putting on yourself? Is it the culture of that kitchen or that environment or that business? And it's okay to expect it to be a place that you enjoy being in. And if it's not, then start challenging and questioning why that's the case. And don't lose your love of food, and don't ever lose the focus of the produce, that it should always be about produce. Don't come in with a bloody recipe and go, how do I find those ingredients? Always look at your season, look at the gardens and the producers around you, start there and then enjoy that produce.
Oh, I love it. Kim, always so wonderful to chat to you. Thank you again for coming on the show and giving us your time, your wisdom, the fruit of your experience. Thank you so much.
Pleasure, Dani.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.